everybody, and welcome. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the nations we're meeting from. I pay my respect to all elders past, present, and emerging. So welcome, everybody. We're having another session with MLA today with some fantastic and exciting guests. But one thing I would like to remind everybody is, could you please do the survey at the end of the session? It's valuable information for all of us, and that we can keep running all of these sessions moving forward. So I'd like to introduce our speakers today. First up, you all know our Sam Burke, our Product and Business Development Manager and Corporate Chef. For those of you that don't know, Sam is an executive chef, marketing and hospitality operations manager with more than 25 years of industry experience. I thought it was more, Sam.
Getting grey these days. Yep.
We like to share a joke here too. Working with premium beef, lamb, veal, and goat. Sam's knowledge of red meat spans the entire supply chain, having worked closely alongside farmers, processors, food technology scientists, chefs, restaurant chains, retailers, CEOs, and meat traders to understand and celebrate the attributes of beef and lamb to the global chef and food service community. Sam joined MLA in 2014 and has traveled across Australia and the globe promoting and celebrating the quality and diversity of premium Australian red meat to the wider community. So welcome, Sam.
Thank you, Karen.
Also, one of our special guests today is Robert Mackenzie, or more commonly known as Macka. Welcome, Macka. Robert is the director of Macka's Australian Black Angus beef, which was established in 1884 and is proudly family owned and operated for over 4 generations. Macka's is all about producing high quality grass-fed and grain-finished Black Angus beef, produced on ethical, eco-friendly and sustainable farms. Macka's mantra is fresh, clean, green, and sustainable. Welcome, Macka, and thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, we're looking forward to a good session today. And of course, it wouldn't be a session if we didn't have the fabulous Kelly Payne, who's MSA retailer and training facilitator. So good afternoon, Kelly, also.
And the wonderful thing is, pardon me for intruding there, that Kelly was also a producer up until 2019 for a number of years too. So he's a butcher and a producer. Best of both worlds. There you go.
Even better, we get to get all that knowledge across the room.
Yep.
So as I say, Kelly is never pleased with the status quo, and his pursuit of tasty, tender beef every time has become a lifelong ambition. As the end user trainer facilitator for Meat Standards Australia, Kelly has been responsible for implementing the MSA program to the end user sector of the meat industry. Training and licensing hotels, global catering, butchers, wholesalers, and independent supermarkets have been the focus of the end user program over the past 20 years. Prior to this, Kelly honed his passion for beef and sheep meat, owning and running a boutique meat wholesale business as a young man, delivering into the Brisbane retail butcher market from a family property on the Darling Downs. Kelly has also had the opportunity to prepare live cattle and long-fed carcass for the Japanese market in the early 90s for one of Australia's pastoral houses. To complete the product circle, Kelly implemented a new consumer brand into an independent retail and restaurant butcher business, supplying retail customers and large restaurants across Queensland. So I truly think we've got some great talent and knowledge here within the room today, and I look forward to hearing the session. So I'll hand over to you, Sam. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Karen. It's an absolute pleasure to be back here for the Australian Culinary Federation and other visitors that have joined in today. We're going to have a fun session here today. We're going to talk from the producer right up to the plate, and we're going to talk about what the red meat industry is doing in relation to sustainable consumption of product and sustainable raising of product. And to start it off, before we speak to Macka, I just want to show a video that really describes the passion that goes into Macka's Black Angus beef.
Hello, I'm Robert Mackenzie from Macka's Australian Black Angus Beef, and welcome to Woko Station. I'm the 4th generation beef producer in our family, and it started back in 1884. A lot has changed since those days, but a lot remains the same. Our surname Mackenzie, from Scotland, deep in history and tradition, just like the Angus breed. The Angus breed come to Australia in 1824, first landed in Hobart, Tasmania. Health and well-being is paramount in our operation. That's why here at Macka's Australian Black Angus Beef, we put a lot of effort into looking after our land and the environment and the cattle, because we find happy cattle produce outstanding product. When it comes to transporting our cattle here at Macka's Australian Black Angus Beef, we really focus on managing the cattle quietly and steadily. We usually take a couple of days to get them into the yards, load them onto the truck very carefully, quietly, and we get a much better result because a happy, quiet, relaxed animal travels better because it's all about low stress. So at Macka's Australian Black Angus Beef, we're focused on low stress, happy animals. Australia's reputation of supplying fresh, green, clean product around the world is something that we take pride in, because here at Macka's Australian Black Angus Beef, we produce a high quality product, grass-fed, grain finished. It's where our animals live a stress-free, relaxed life, grazing on amazing pasture on the east coast of Australia, and then is finished in a 150-day grain-fed program in a feedlot. Grass-fed, grain finished, as good as it gets. We're very privileged to be working with Meat and Livestock Australia on the Producer to Plate series, where we get to tell our story on where your product comes from. We've found that the MLA have been the perfect partner when we're trying to showcase our product on the world stage. Their commitment to Australian red meat is second to none. So together Macka's and the MLA are here to tell the story that you're looking for. Our focus at Macka's is to supply sustainable beef, to supply a quality product to the consumer and the food service sector, because now more than ever before, they are looking for a quality product that comes with story, that comes with credibility and is sustainable. So together, Macka's and the MLA are delivering the quality product that you deserve. And the way we're doing this is with a social licence. The community, the land, our environment and our cattle, because we are committed to sustainability. We run less cattle per hectare. We rotate our cattle on a regular basis. We protect our water and natural environment, because here at Macka's Australian Black Angus Beef, we are committed to Australian agriculture.
Well, if your hairs didn't get up in the back of your neck then, I don't know what's wrong with you, because I've never met a passionate bloke in my life. Ladies and gentlemen, Macka, you want to unmute, mate? I welcome you to the Australian Culinary Federation. Now, today we're talking about sustainable menu development. I saw a lot of passion in that video. Yeah. Elaborate to the end user, the chef, on what goes into the product, so they can pass that story on to the consumer when they're serving Australian beef.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Look, I watched that again, and I still get moved even after I watched it a few times. What goes into it? A lot of work goes into it. A lot of hard work, a lot of dedication, a lot of commitment, a lot of pain, and a lot of joy. But look, I couldn't be prouder being able to supply a high quality product to the consumer, not only here in Australia but around the world, and working with great people throughout the food service sector, working with the MLA and just great people. It's a proud moment. What goes into it? A lot of commitment, Sam.
So talk to me. You know, we were chatting just before we went live. What are the things that producers are doing these days to ensure that cattle are happy and they're producing great beef and helping with the sustainability goal, the ambitious goal to be carbon neutral by 2030 for the Australian red meat industry? What are you doing on your farm to meet those goals? Because I know you've got some great stories there.
Look, we're really focused on animal health and well-being. You know, we implemented a pain relief product for all our marking for our calves and anything we do with the cows, a pain relief. We've put in scratching blocks. It's where we imported like road sweeper brushes in segments. We put them together. We have them around the paddocks where cattle can go and scratch mites, flies, whatever, scratch themselves. We put in more trees for more shade. We're storing more water in tanks and running it into troughs so the water's even cleaner. And that's a big job. Just if you just look at Woko Station, for instance, that's one of 8 properties. Yeah, we ran about 28 kilometres of pipe, 2 solar pumps, 1 windmill, 3 storage tanks, 35 troughs. You know, just that infrastructure work is what we did. We also had to do that because the drought nearly killed us. You know, we spent $750,000 feeding cattle, $250,000 in water, and we had to cart water at one stage 200 kilometres with one of our trucks because the solar pump couldn't pump because the bushfires, the smoke was that intense. We had no water on the property. So, you know, we're committed to Australian agriculture, just like so many other farmers are here in Australia.
So you're talking about something else I saw on LinkedIn a few years ago, the BBC in announcement of the free trade agreement came out, and you were talking to some BBC reporters about what you're doing on a sustainable front, because you were questioned, weren't you?
Yeah, look, I think it was a stage question. The question was, Australia isn't renowned for the best animal practices. And, you know, I nearly fell over and I thought, well, I know that we are committed and we've been committed for generations, and I know other people are. So what we did, we took that conservative effort to even tell that story more. And that's why we worked with a company that produced a product called trisulfan, and we really pushed that we are using pain relief like so many other people in our operation. At that point, we didn't use pain relief, but that was a jolt to us to say we need to change what we're doing. So the perception around the world is that Australia is committed to producing a quality product from paddock to plate.
And one of the things I saw in the video, then running less cattle per hectare, how does that help with sustainability and reducing carbon footprint?
Yeah, that's a good question. We're currently running about 3,500 breeders. We would be able to run 4,000, but we've chose over the last 5 years, and that probably also had something to do with the drought, but we've chose to run a few less cattle. Why? Because we're giving time for our paddocks we do a rotational grade. 8 paddocks, 8 properties, 3,500 cows spread over all those properties. We rotate the cattle from paddock to paddock. Low handling, low stress. Go in, eat fresh grass, go out, go in, tidy that paddock up. Gives the time for the grass to grow, Sam. Okay, we're not putting as much pressure on the properties, we're running less cattle. Gives time for the grass to grow. So the cows eat it, we come in and give it a mow. We may fertilise it with organic fertiliser. When you mow it, the roots get stronger and deeper into the soil, which you need to get micro and bioorganisms, sequester carbon into the soil. That all helps produce a really good paddock. Oh, what I was going to say is it gives time for the grass to grow. You think about a solar panel on your roof. If it's not clean, if it's not big, you're not going to bring in power. If the leaf of the grass isn't fresh, if it isn't clean, isn't big, it's not going to sequester carbon.
So one of the things that leads to my next question, right? So you talk to your wholesalers as well, and then one of the other things I've noticed by you, because you've got a strong presence on social media, Macka, is you've had a lot of communication directly to the front line, directly to the chef. And I've actually noticed that firsthand, you know, like how do you instill your passion, your knowledge, and your in sustainability to the chef So they're telling a story to their customer when they come and eat at their venue. Give me an example.
Well, look, we've been really lucky. We've had some great chefs come onto our farm, and we welcome that. We welcome that interaction. And seeing their face when we're getting cattle in, when we're talking about sustainability, we're talking about how we do it, that made me realise they were hungry for information. So our social media has been designed to tell a story about Australian agriculture, but also give tools to the chefs, the food service sector on how best they can tell that story. So we've developed, might be an Australian flag with a QR code. So the consumer might be on the menu. They can scan that and they can get the full story about how Australia is committed to sustainable practices, animal health and wellbeing, and how we do it. We've been working closely with Seagrass Hospitality, a fine state restaurant in Sydney called Six Head, with Scott and Sean. And it was moving. We've been invited twice now. It was slowed up because of COVID, where it was the chef's table. But we were invited, where we got to tell our story to the consumer. And those consumers were hungry for that story. And it was moving, being able to say, yeah, we have fresh eggs, what we do with our cattle, why are we like this? Why do we do this? So that's been great. But also working with those key people has taught us what we need to do. And that was look at our genetics. Last year, we spent $250,000 on one bull. We AI'd that bull to 1,000 cows this year because his genetics is the next level. And that's what the food service sector is looking for, improved product. And that's what we're doing. But now, more than ever before, they want sustainable product. They want animal best practices. They want carbon neutral and carbon negative. And that's what Australia's doing. And that's what we're doing. We'll be carbon neutral in 2022. And I'm so proud of that. It's something that, when I look back, it's what we've always done, but we've enhanced it faster.
Fantastic, Macka. Look, that's a good segue, right? Because you were talking about consistency and good product. And that's where Meat Standards Australia comes in. So we just hang around for a second, Macka. Deb, if we can pin our corporate butcher, Kelly Payne from Meat Standards Australia, and give Macka a chance to get a drink of water. He'll come on and ask some questions, answer some questions from our chefs at the end of today. But right now, we'll start off with Kelly Payne. G'day, Kelly, live from the Sunshine Coast. How are you, mate?
We are fantastic as always, Sammy. Thanks for asking. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, good, mate. So look, we talked about what the producer's doing to give a sustainable product. Now, beef's an expensive commodity. We want to make sure that chefs are, number one, it's profitable. Number one, they have success of it on menu. Number one, they're getting a good eating quality. So we're actually looking at a secondary cut. I don't like to call them secondary cuts, non-prime cut here today, which has the same eating quality consistency as a Scotch fillet. Is that correct? No.
Well, I'm going to prove that too, Sam, in a minute. Absolutely.
Okay, so mate, the floor is yours. Announce the cut, and what are we doing?
Sammy, I think we're going to, if you wouldn't mind, if we throw straight to the PowerPoint, and we'll come back to what I've got in front of me here. But ladies and gentlemen, Greg Ryan, good afternoon from the West. How are you, my friend? There he goes. It's a wave. The pressure's right on, ladies and gentlemen. Greg Ryan's in the house.
So let me just open this PowerPoint.
While Sammy's bringing up the PowerPoint. So I just wanted to quickly discuss where it's from, what consumers said about the cut that we're going to talk about.
All right, we're going to share the screen now.
Thanks, Sammy.
That's what we're going with, Kelly.
We'll work with that. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So just on the image there, ladies and gentlemen, you can see the. If you can just run your cursor, Sammy, down to the shoulder of the carcass.
Yeah.
And then we can see to the right-hand side of that, we can see the bowler blade, all of the muscles that come out of the shoulder, the bowler blade, oyster blade, and the shoulder tender, as we can see.
Can everyone see that cursor moving? Yep.
Yep. So if we just go to the next slide, please, Sammy. Yeah, great. So just before we get to the important stuff, so just so that people don't get confused, Sam, geographically, we've got the bowler and the oyster on the left-hand image, or the blade, the ham number 2300. And then on the right-hand side, we've got the chuck tender, which is the conical muscle. Now, it actually sits, it's a neighbour to the oyster blade. So when we remove the whole shoulder blade off a carcass, the chuck tender, which is completely different, but it sits right next door to the blade. Yeah, that's it, Sammy. Yep, thank you. We're not going to talk about that today. Let's not get confused. So we'll go to the next slide. And wham, bam, there we are. So these are all the cuts that come out of the blade. So in the top left-hand corner, Sammy, we've got our bowler and oyster, which makes a whole blade. Or sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, when you purchase it in a carton, it'll be called a clod, a C-L-O-D, which it can be identified as an export cut. Directly below that, we've got our oyster blade, which we'll come back to in a second. If we move immediately to the right, Sammy, thank you. We've got one of our favourites as well, but as much a favourite as the oyster blade is the shoulder tender, which sits on the bottom of the oyster blade as well when you remove the scapula. And then above is, directly above that, thanks Sam, is the bowler blade. And that's all been fully denuded. And if you see it in a butcher shop, that would be your blade steak. So on to the next slide, please, Sam. And we all remember, ladies and gentlemen, and this is really cool, and we'll go to the last slide, which will be the lovely punchline. But we all remember from the sessions we've had before, the consumers' eating quality score, or the CMQ4 score, or the consumer meat eating quality score, which is a rating between 0 and 100. And if we all remember, Sam, don't we, that we've got anything that fails. Sorry, that's actually the wrong number, but anything that fails will be below 46 points out of 100. Between 46 and 64 is what we call our 3-star range, which is the next one. Thanks, Sam. And then we have our 4-star range from 64 to 76, and then 5-star from 76 and above. And so if you bear that in mind, and if you keep a mental note of that, we'll go to the next slide, please, Sam. Boom, boom. Now that's really tiny. But if you can zoom to the very top, Sam, you'll see the cube roll. Whoop, on that side, yep. The cube roll, and then as a grilling steak, what's the number that it's got beside it? Can you read it, Sam? It's quite small. I'm sorry.
65.
65. So yep. Consumers said out of this particular animal, and we won't go into any detail here, that the cube roll out of that animal was 65 points according to consumers through blind consumer sensory. Zoom all the way to the bottom in the same column, Sammy. What's the oyster blade?
71. So it's actually eats higher than the Scotch fillet.
Hang on, hold the phone. Are you kidding me?
No.
So when we put 1.1 million consumer samples in front of consumers in a blind consumer sensory test, consumers actually rate oyster blade as a more, a better eating quality cut under the 4 eating quality categories of tenderness, juiciness, flavour, and overall liking. Okay. So can.
There's a perfect example for the MSA system how a secondary cut actually eats better than a primal.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, I couldn't put it. Thanks, Sammy. Unfortunately, I couldn't put it on that slide, but the shoulder tender as a grill actually rates particularly very, very well. So before Sammy goes to the, I'm finished now, but before Sam goes to the video, which will explain exactly what I'm going to show you, but it just so happened, like any good presenter, here's one I prepared earlier, Sam. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is an oyster blade, but it's butterflied out. So it's an enormous piece of meat, and I just weighed it a moment ago. So that's a whole oyster blade, butterflied out. It's this big, flat, magnificent piece of meat. And what's interesting, Sam, we haven't mentioned this too many times, but when we cook an oyster blade or a flat iron steak, as it's now known, we would put it on the pan like so. In consumer sensory, I'll tell you, one of the more recent consumer sensories that we did, we cooked it like that, like in a, well, not in a toaster, but we cooked it on its end to see if consumers had any issue with it being cooked that way. Oyster blade is so unique that it has tiny little muscle fibres, and it doesn't matter which way you cook it, consumers had no difference in whether it was cooked as on the flat or it was cooked on its end. Lastly, an absolute foolproof piece of meat, because you can roll it this way, as we did in the video, Sammy.
Yes.
So we've got a beautiful roast that way. Or if you wanted to, and it's almost square anyway, that you can roll it from this direction and cut it and cook it, and it's not going to make any difference. Now,
or you could cut it into flat iron steaks, Kelly.
and you can cut it into flat iron steaks. You can do whatever you like, and you can't make an error. Now, and I guess from a cost point of view, Sammy, what I just wanted to identify that I actually just weighed this a moment ago, and there's 1.3 kilograms. Before we even stuff it, we could get 8.5 portions at 150 grams.
Well, Australian beef. For our roast, we've kept it really simple because we want the beef to be the star of the show. We've got heirloom carrots, kifla potatoes, string green beans, and we've done a mesclun salad with some watermelon radish. When preparing this cut for cooking, we want to keep it really simple. So we'll start off with some salt, pepper, seeded mustard, a squeeze of lemon, and a little oil. Straight into our shallow gastro pan, into the oven. We want to cook it at about 160 degrees Celsius dry heat, and we want to probe it till it reaches 56 degrees Celsius. Our roast is ready. Time to rest it and then carve it. The wonderful thing about roast is that in summertime you can serve it with salads as an accompaniment, or in those winter months you can serve it with roasted vegetables. It's really up to you. Australian beef, the greatest meat on earth. So everyone, just apologies with that. Bit of technology freezing here in our head office, but I hope it wasn't too bad and the video came across at the end. So Kelly, appreciate the video here today. Do you have anything else that you want to wrap off before we talk about sustainability on the chef side of the circuit, which is less wastage, portion controls? Is there anything that the MSA model ties into that you could illustrate today with our guests here from the Australian Culinary Federation?
Yeah, I think really briefly, Sam, I'm conscious of the time, but you raised it just before the final video. And ladies and gentlemen, the MSA Eating Quality program has recently updated the model, which now includes 12 cut-by-cook combinations or 275 cut-by-cook outcomes now, Sam, doesn't it, on a beef carcass. But more importantly, the last 4 that have been tested and added to the model is combi oven cooking is one of them, and sous vide is another. And then we've got cold roast meat. But just coming back to the combi oven, Sammy, we've seen, haven't we, some unbelievable advances in eating quality according to consumers by using a combi oven. So particularly in the food service space, leaps and bounds in relation to using non-prime cuts through the combi oven and having excellent outcomes. So I'll leave it.
Well, if I recall, back when, not a long time ago, 90s, there was 2 brands, Convafirm and Rationale, and now we're seeing an infiltration of many brands at many different price points. So we're seeing that now a staple part of the kitchen. So it's important that we need to be keeping up with methods that chefs can have, utilizing that technology in their kitchen to make life a bit easier for them. So our next video, thank you very much, Kelly, for your time today. Our next video is in relation to sustainable eating on the chef side. What can we do for sustainable menu production as chefs? And we'll start off today with MLA's Senior Food and Nutrition Manager, Vero Droulet, and myself, and we're going to give you some tips and tricks on sustainable menu production with Australian red meat on menu. Hi, Sam Burke, Corporate Chef for Meat and Livestock Australia. And today I'm joined by Vero Droulet, who's our Nutrition Manager here at Meat and Livestock Australia. Today, we're going to talk about the ambitious target the Australian red meat industry has to be carbon neutral by 2030. So what does this mean for food service? Vero, welcome.
Thank you, Sam.
So Vero, how can chefs make their menus more sustainable?
Well, Sam, it's all about sustainable consumption. The evidence shows that reducing food waste is key. Essentially, food that is not eaten is a waste of all those resources that was used to produce and transport the food.
So that makes perfect sense. So how can the chefs reduce food waste in their kitchen?
Funnily enough, portion size is the key to a sustainable diet. Eating the right amount of food is not only good for the environment, as we all know, it's also important for maintaining a healthy weight.
So Vera, as a food service professional, portion size is very important because it helps maintain the bottom line. Not only that, consumers are looking at healthier, smaller portions to maintain their lifestyle. So it's a win-win-win: health, environment, and profit. Vero, can you show us some portion guidelines of Australian red meat in menus for food service?
Serving portion sizes of around 100 to 200 grams raw weight per person is not only in line with the Australian dietary guidelines, but it's also the amounts that Australians typically eat in their homes. So for instance, when they're having salads, they tend to have about 100 grams raw weight, and when they have a steak, they'll have 200 grams raw weight. So really, if you can feature meals with these different portion sizes on the menu, then customers can choose amounts that they are used to eating and suit their appetite, and they'll be more likely to eat it.
So Vera, I've got some ideas. So say if you had a large steak, 350 grams, you could serve that to your customer and portion it at the table for two with some healthy sides. Other ideas is smaller bowls or plates to make sure that the dish looks fuller when you're serving it to the customer. If you're doing a carvery, for example, you can weigh the first portion out, visualize it, and then cut it the same way for the customers throughout the service period. And lastly, if you've got a selection of utensils and you're serving wet dishes, you can actually portion as per need with the size of the utensil to your food service customer.
Those are great ideas, Sam. As you know, I am passionate about serving customers healthier choices with beef and lamb. So I'm very excited to hear those ideas.
Well, thanks, Vero. You've inspired us here today with our presentation. We're going to do a grilled sirloin steak for two. We're going to follow it up with a power bowl featuring the rump, roast beef, and then lastly, we're going to do an easy carb leg of lamb. And to finish it off, we've got our corporate butcher, Doug Piper, who's going to show us how to portion it. Vero, thanks for coming to Rare Medium Academy.
Thank you, Sam.
And you can find all this information and recipes on Rare Medium Academy. So thanks for your time, and hopefully that one came through. So I guess we saw the responsibility of Macka on the land providing sustainable product to the chef. It's our responsibility as chefs to look at wastage and utilising the protein effectively to have sustainable consumption and healthy diets to our customers. So it works both ways. It's not just the producer. Meat waste that goes in the bin at the end of service, something's had to grow. Energy has had to go into making that animal, come to the table. If it's going in the bin, well, then that's a waste. Waste is affects sustainability, and as chefs, we've got a responsibility to look after our consumers. Yes, it's good to have the occasional treat, but more and more, especially with those commercial catering providers that we're dealing with every day, cruise ship operators, pubs even. I've talked to some hotels lately. They want variety for their consumers because not everyone's going to have the 350 gram Scotch fillet chips and peppercorn sauce that Sam Burke has when he goes to the pub. People want smaller portions, and in turn, that helps us as chefs not only add variety to our menu, but control our cost of goods, which we've got a real responsibility to do if we all agree with that one. So I guess that brings one more video here today, and I'm going to show an example of a smaller portion beef dish utilizing the rump, the roast beef. And if you just stand by, I'll just show that, and that'll be our last video today. And then we'll go to questions. We'll open the floor up and people can ask questions to the producer, the butcher, and the chef. So let's go with our last video, which is sustainable menu development with a beef power bowl or vitality bowl, if you like, for your menu that you can put on. And by the way, all these menus and recipes can be found at raremediumacademy.com, printable PDFs and videos, and you can watch all the videos that I alluded to with my interview of Vero in your own time at raremediumacademy.com. So just take that down, and you'll have some tools there to help you have success with Australian red meat, with sustainable menu options on your menu. So here we go with the last video here today with myself and our corporate butcher, Doug Piper.
Can you see, please?
I'm Doug Piper, Corporate Butcher for Meat and Livestock Australia. Today I'm going to talk to you about one of those lesser known cuts, the roast beef. That's roast beef, R-O-S-T-B-I-F-F. The roast beef is part of the rump. It's actually the whole centre cut of the rump once the rump cap is actually removed. So first of all, we take off that rump cap, trim off all the fat, and that leaves us with a nice rump centre, which is obviously what we call the roast beef. From there, what I want to do is actually slice that into 3 portions. So we end up with a rump side muscle, and then you've got the rump centre, which we will then split in half, and then we'll pass it over to Chef Sam to cook up for his power bowl.
Well, thanks, Doug. He's prepared this roast beef perfectly. He's cut it into 3 separate logs. Now, let's talk about how we're going to marinate and reverse sear this cut prior to putting it on the grill. First up, let's get all the ingredients for the marinade into a bowl and give them a good whisk. Then we're going to transfer the beef into a gastro tray and then marinate the beef, put it into the combi oven at 60 degrees Celsius dry heat with an internal temperature of 56 degrees. We're then going to remove the beef and we're going to pan sear it on the hot grill using the reserving marinated from the pan to baste the beef. Now we're going to cut our roast beef across the grain and then we're going to bring it to our ingredients. The wonderful thing about salads is you don't necessarily have to have a big portion of red meat. 100 grams to 140 grams is fine. You've got all those textures and flavours from the other ingredients that really bring a bowl full of health to your customer. Australian beef, the greatest meat on earth. Well, team, thanks for your patience. That concludes our video presentations here today. What I'd like to do now is open up the floor to any questions. So anyone, if they'd just like to unmute, we'll take 1 question at a time. If anyone's got questions, that is. And you can talk to the producer, the chef, or the butcher. We're all standing by. So Macka and Kelly, if you could unmute, that'd be good. And we'll just see if we could take some questions from the floor, please. It's a quiet day. Everyone's quiet. No questions?
Maybe I've got a question, Sam.
Go, Macka.
Yeah, so obviously I spoke about what I think the chef's looking for, the food service sector's looking for. Is there anyone out there that would actually, like to say what you would like to see more from a producer? Is there anyone out there that could ask, could help me better my knowledge?
No? Well, I guess one question came through earlier on. Came to me via an email by one of the participants today, and Kelly, it was to yourself. What other secondary cuts graded by Meat Standards Australia could be put on menu to make a cost efficiency dividend? That are cheaper than a prime cut and give an excellent eating quality outcome for a steak. So we've got our Scotch fillet and our tenderloin and our sirloin, which are those common cuts. We saw the oyster blade. Is there any other cuts there that work tremendously on grills, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Sam. So I get so looking at grills, we would have to investigate through the model, but there's an enormous amount, and sorry, I probably may not get too specific today because we would have to delve into the different cut by cook combinations. But if I guess without notice, but when we work our way around the beef carcass and things like applying a different cook method, Sam, as you have, for instance, I'll just give 2 examples. One is utilising rump and using that reverse seared method. That when we look at the modelling around consumer sensory, I think you and I saw something like a 3% increase by using a different cook method on rump, for instance, through a reverse searing method. One of the other things, and I guess the US are already doing it, but there are some very big muscles within the chuck group of muscles. One of them, the US call the Denver, or its anatomical name is the serratus ventralis. And we've seen that consumers in blind sensory like that cut. So I guess without getting into too many specifics, there are quite a lot of opportunities in a beef carcass other than the recognised sweet cuts. And I think as we go on with these sessions that we might investigate those more, Sam. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of some of the other opportunities.
Macka, one question's come to me through text just now through to my home from one of the participants viewing today. How long do you feed your beef on grain after it started on grass?
Yeah, we have a 150-day program. That's what we work, and we work closely with Elders Feedlot at Killara. We've got a great partnership with them. So 150-day program, and it works best for us.
And talk to me about your cattle. Have you, another question that's also come through right now on the phone, have you always farmed Angus, or in the past did you do other breeds of cattle too? And have you always been grain fed? Were you grass fed initially, or just over the 4 generations?
Yeah, look, that's a really good question. When my great auntie started, they just had whatever they could get their hands on. And when Dad was a kid, crossbred dairy cattle, Murray Grey, Herefords, whatever it was. We chose to move across to Angus, I would say probably about 30 years ago now, and we haven't looked back.
Fantastic. So you've got a British breed. Another question that's just come through, the phone's finally going off. Kelly, you might be able to help Macka out with this. What's the difference between Bos Indicus and Bos Taurus breeds of cattle? Kelly, just in layman's term for the chef.
Yeah, so the MSA program, or I'll just start if you like, Macka, accepts all animals, and I think that's really important to understand. And there are a lot of different breeds in Australia, but the what we refer to in the MSA program as a tropical breed animal, or the likes of a Brahman, and these animals have humps, and all of these animals are accepted. And so what consumers told us about animals is a whole bunch of stuff. So I guess the best explanation I can give you, Sam, is that a lot of these things are environmental. So, and as all of these things that Macka just told us about. So all animals are accepted, and it's important that animals have a good environment to grow in, and consumers do their job after that.
Thank you for those questions. Prakash texted me, through the phone, mate. Thank you very much. Our good mate Prakash is tuned in today and helping us out with some questions from the floor. So well done, Prakash. Look, guys, if we can just pinpoint to me, I'm holding Red Meat Green Facts. That's a little pocket book that's been developed for anyone. But what's so good about it is chefs can have that in their toolkit. And on the other side is Red Meat Green Facts and Red Meat Health Facts. And it's our responsibility as chefs to have the knowledge when customers ask questions. So for everyone that's online today, I'd like you to go to osgoodmeat at mla.com.au. So that's osgoodmeat, AUS, goodmeat at mla.com.au. And we will send you one of these little booklets out. And there's lots of little tips and tricks and knowledge here for you guys to have. Fits good in your toolkit, and it helps you with your menu writing and to be more knowledge as chefs. So everyone goes away with a gift tonight. It's a Red Meat Health Facts, and you flip it over. It's Red Meat Good Facts book coming to you from Meat and Livestock Australia for you to keep in your toolkits, or even as a consumer, if you're tuning in today, that you can utilize. Now, finally, before we finish here today, I think we're right on time. We said we'd be going at 5 o'clock. I'm going to give you 8 minutes of your day back. But what I'd love for you to do is it really helps us if you do the survey at the end, because then we can learn about what you want to see in the future. So we can do masterclasses that you enjoy seeing. Is it one that we want to do live now that we can get out and about, per state, So we only know if we get the information. So I'm going to hold a QR code up on the screen right now, and I'm going to share that, and then get your mobile phones or take a photo of it, and at a time later, scan that QR code, take the survey and let us know what you want. We're not mind readers here. We've got a good idea what you want, but the only way that we're going to know if you've enjoyed today's session or if you want to learn more is if you let us know. So if I could ask everyone here today, you heard Karen at the beginning of the presentation, take the survey. It's about 5 minutes of your time and it helps us out so much because we've got to get feedback, otherwise we're really flying blind. So look, on behalf of Meat and Livestock Australia, I'd like to say a big thank you to Kelly Payne and our producer, Mr. Robert Mackenzie. Thank you very much to Deb, Julie Ballard and Karen for the organisation of today's masterclass. Has everyone got that QR code? I'll just stop sharing it right now. And like I said, go to osgoodmeat@mla.com.au. Let us know. We'll send you out one of these books. If you can't wait and you need the information now, head to redmeatgreenfacts.com.au. That's redmeatgreenfacts.com.au. And we have all the information ready for you to go online. Last plug, raremediumacademy.com for all the recipes and tools that you need for red meat in food service. Thank you very much for your time here today. Do we have any more questions before we end the presentation?
No, the only thing we've said, Sam, all links will be sent out and we have them in the chat at the moment. So thank you also for MLA and everybody online today for a fantastic seminar.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Good night
you.
and
Good
great
afternoon.
to see you.